Well, welcome to New Tracks Meetup. Really appreciate you coming. Hope you enjoy the show. I think you will. Got a great guest. Next time you come, bring a friend with you. The more the merrier. Hope anybody that's new to the show and hasn't done it yet will go to our newtracksmodeling.com website and register on the site so that you'll automatically get emails about all our future shows and about our train shows. Our next train show, for example, is going to be November the 21st at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And we hope that you'll attend it, hope that you'll tell everybody to attend it, and hope that you enjoy all of the modelers that you will see make presentations during the train show. You'll see an awful lot of creativity from the various manufacturers. And we have a list of all of the manufacturers that are going to be in the show that we can share with you. We're very pleased with the number of manufacturers that we have. This is almost twice as many as we had at the first train show in September. This show is really going to be something, and you just don't want to miss it. So with that said, I'd like to also make sure that you know about the My Bill section that's coming up on December the 12th, that Chris Gorse runs that section. And Chris, I don't know whether you'd like to say a few words or not, but I will say that if you want to be in Chris's My Bill segment, I highly recommend that you contact him by email. And Dylan, if you could maybe share his email, because in one of our previous ones, he had so many people that wanted to share their modeling. We ran out of time before we could get everybody on. So if you can let him know that you're interested, then he'll do everything he can to schedule you. So Chris, would you like to say a few things, a few words?
Yeah, actually, Jim, exactly what you said is we ended up with more people than we had time for. And that blew me away. And I'm glad that we have so many people that are willing to share their stuff and ask questions and show off their works. And if you have things you would like to show off, then drop me a line. My email's right there. I think as of right now, I've got one guy in the queue for the next My Build session.
Well, that sounds good, and really do encourage everybody to participate in this, because that's how we learn. We learn from each other, basically, and that's what these shows are about. And hope that you'll participate and want to share your modeling with us. Our featured modeler tonight is a really creative modeler, Mike Baker of Nick and Nora Designs. Mike and his wife own the company, and he's going to be our featured modeler tonight. He's also going to be in our November the 21st show, which is another reason for you to attend the show to hear from him then. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, well, thanks for having me. Welcome to the studio. This is pretty much where I spend half of my days, working on the various projects and developing the kits and the detail parts and things. And that's the other half there. She's running out of the picture. So happy to be here tonight. Happy to see what everybody's up to. Don't really have an agenda set, Jim, so I don't know if you got any questions for me or
really like to see some of your modeling, if you can show us some of your modeling, Mike. And also, tell us a little bit about you and your how you got into model railroading. I mean, is this just something that you picked up on the fly, or lifelong, or what?
Yeah, it actually has been lifelong. It started as a kid building models like everybody. My first model was a Starship Enterprise I built with my dad, and then getting interested in building models and various things. But then at 15, I got a job at the local hobby store. People in the Delaware, Pennsylvania region will remember Mitchell's Family Stores, and they had the big brass section and everything. They had 2 stores. And at 15, I got a job at the Newcastle store and learned all about the difference between nickel silver track and steel track and brass track, and what was good about them and what was bad about them, and why an MRC transformer was better than the little one that came with a Bachmann, and selling the Athearn Blue Box stuff. Eventually, it was a couple months later that I started doing custom painting for people on their models if they wanted something different, because there was only so many options, or they had brass. So I started doing custom painting at the age of 15, not really knowing what I was getting myself into at the time. So I did that, and I had this desire to go to art school. So I finished high school and I moved to Savannah, Georgia to go to the Savannah College of Art and Design. And lo and behold, there was a little store there that sold art supplies, but was also a model railroad hobby store called Bull Street Station. So the owners knew me from coming in to buy art supplies and colored pencils. And one day I was picking up some flow cool paints for a personal project I was doing a locomotive, and the owners offered me a job. So I start working at Bull Street Station in Savannah, and I bring in a couple pieces that I had done. I put them on the store layout. Next thing I know, the owners are coming up to me and saying, we're doing a limited run of the River Street Rambler, which was a SW 1500 that ran down River Street at the time and had a real splashy paint scheme because it was a big tourist area. And can you hear me that? And they had somebody, but their custom painter had backed out. So that's the River Street Rambler for anybody that hasn't seen it before. That's the prototype. So they ended up giving me all the locomotives, the decals, the detail parts they wanted, and were paying me a certain cost per locomotive, which I think was $50 a locomotive. So I took them all home over Christmas break, brought them all back in January, and they paid me for them all. And then they sold them out of the store. And so by the time I graduated college, I had a business. Didn't expect it. So I've been doing custom building and painting since 1985.
Well, I've had a lot of modelers since we announced that you were going to be the featured modeler tonight. I've had probably half a dozen different people send me emails saying they've seen your work and they're so pleased that you're on the show tonight. So
That's great. I've done I've had several articles published in all the various magazines, going from Rail Model Journal to Model Railroad Craftsman, Mainline Modeler. I've done just all kinds of various things. I've done lots of projects that weren't model railroad related. I've done everything from architectural models to engineering models. I actually worked for a engineering model company when I first got out of college, which was really interesting, and I learned a lot. They weren't super detailed models we were doing basically process piping models and technical models for DuPont. So they were design models, but it was really fun. I learned a great deal. And then back about 15 years ago, we started playing with, I had all these sketchbooks full of things. I had all these things I'd built, but never got to really do my own layout. And we started playing with the idea of starting our own kit line. And so we did. And that's how Nick and Nora Designs got started. It was just other ideas that I had and wanted to do something with them. And I'd had several sketches, and we came out with our first one, the Crab Shack. And it was really well received, and we kind of had fun designing it, and it was kind of a different process. And so we just kind of did some more things. In fact, our haunted house kit, which I think was our third kit, was actually a custom project for a client. And it was just such an interesting building. It's a 3-level boarding house with a mansard roof on top, which presented a problem. How do you model a mansard roof? And then we'd already done the drawings to do the one for the client. And we're like, this would be a great kit. And I've already figured out all the logistics for it. So it was just a matter of turning it into cut files and laser cutting the kits. Then that's been another really fun one. And it's just, as things are catching our eyes, and we've got a couple things back here that I'm playing with, which may become kits, or they may just get built and sold. I don't know. And then after we started doing the kits, we added detail parts because we needed certain things. I found our detail part line has kind of grown as I need something for a project. I figure everybody else needs it. I was detailing some gas stations for a client. They were Summit custom cut kits, which are all styrene kits, and they're modern gas stations I was building. But we're doing these scenes where they want them super detailed. And every gas station you go by has those ice machines with the 2 big doors, and nobody had that detail part. So I got some styrene, I made a couple masters, and we made some molds, and that was our first detail part. And it's kind of grown from there. I need something, I just fabricate it. Then we added our own laser cut shingles because I got tired of paying for them buying them from other people, and I wanted different styles and colors, so we've added that to the line. And then on top of that, we carry true color paint. We carry Sylvan vehicles, so you can populate your layout. And then we also carry various glues and paint brushes and other things so that you can pretty much get everything you need to build your kit at one stop. And that brings us to where we are here.
Nice.
What's your decision about whether to bring a model as a kit? How do you make that decision?
Well, I still have sketchbooks full of unrealized ideas, and I actually have a couple things that I've started that I just didn't like the way they were turning out, so we kind of just abandoned it. Sometimes I just build something and then we go back and turn it into a kit. We did a Carbone's gas station that somebody had put a picture up on one of the model railroad forums, and I saw it, and just something about the scene really drew me to it. So I did some quick sketches and I built this model, and I was really happy with it. And then I was like, you know what? I always said I would never do a gas station, but then I like this one so much, like, we got to do this as a kid. It's neat. And it's been very, very popular. Another time, somebody put a picture up on one of the forums. This actually turned out to be one of our most popular kits. And I was talking to Jeff Grove at the time of Carolina Craftsman Kits, and somebody put this picture up of this little lunch counter with this beautiful gold metal flower painted sign on the side of the building. And I have a graphic design background too, so I'm really drawn to graphics. And this is just such a neat little building. We got to do it. So I grabbed the picture off the screen and I started doing sketches of it, and I figured out how to recreate the artwork and everything. And we actually had that kit ready in production in less than a week, because I knew if I didn't do it, Jeff was going to have it. It was such an interesting little building. It's been a very good seller for us. It's a popular little kit. In fact, it was just featured in an article. It's not named in the article, but in last month's Model Railroad Craftsman, somebody wrote an article about doing a vacant lot scene, and the vacant lot is next to our Annie's lunch counter kit. So that was kind of neat to see how they took the other side of it. Sometimes they're just their ideas, and there's one of our buildings, our Winans Manufacturing. I had started it for a different project. I was going to do a whole diorama to take to a convention, and client projects got in the way, and I didn't get it finished. But I started a whole bunch of structures, and one of them sat on the mantle in our family room for 2 years. And somebody didn't like the fact it was just sitting on the mantle, not doing anything. So Karen told me to take it downstairs and just finish the scene and turn to a kit, because it was an interesting building. It was kind of a building that was like cobbled together and had angled walls, and then it would look like it was all hodgepodge. It was really interesting. So I just put it on a piece of plywood, and I built other little structures around it and figured out a reason to explain why the wall was angled, and it just turned into a kit. It was fun. So sometimes there's people are looking for things. When we developed the coal mine kit, we had people coming to us at shows saying what is needed is a coal mine that doesn't overpower a scene, that's kind of a small one. So we did ours based on a prototype along the old Norfolk and Western that I had seen a picture of back in the early 90s. And I actually built the first version of it back in 1992 and had it featured in Rail Model Journal. So I took all of my drawings and notes from that and kind of repurposed it. And that's how we came up with our McFay and Forest mining and coal kit. So it's a coal mine that goes over the track, so it doesn't have a huge footprint, but you can make it into a really neat little mountain scene. Just ideas hit, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. There's no really rhyme or reason how it happens.
Do you do all of your own 3D printing and wood cutting and all of that for your kits?
We do no 3D printing yet, because I've not been happy with anything I've seen, but we do. All of our laser cutting is done in-house. All the design work, all the drawings, all the graphics are all done by me. All of the masters for all of our castings are made by me. My wife does all the casting. I'm not patient enough to do that, but she'll do the casting if I give her the molds from our masters. Like I said, we laser cut our own peel and stick shingles that we have in like 5 different styles and 8 different colors in HO and O scale. So yeah, we pretty much try to keep as much in-house as we can. But 3D printing is the one area we haven't gotten into yet. I've also figured out that I can scratch build something out of styrene with my hands faster than I can draw it on the computer. So
what's the future?
well, we've got a couple things in the works. We had one that we were hoping was going to be a big holiday kit, but other projects got in the way. I just finished building a roundhouse for somebody that I crated up yesterday. That was taking up space, and a lot of client projects have been taking up my time. So I'm a little behind on development of new products. But we've got an ore facility that we're playing with the idea. And then there's another one that, I don't know if you can see it, it's all the way behind me. It's multiple structures that I kind of abandoned, but I was told to give it more attention. It's going to be a whole big scene diorama, we think, or it's just going to be the one main building. I haven't quite decided how it shakes out. It was going to be a scene of 3 buildings at a road crossing with a railroad crossing going across it. And then it became a waterfront scene because I wanted more depth. And so I don't know what's next. There's always ideas popping. It's just which ones are we happy enough with? Sometimes I'll just go back and fiddle with things, and I'll tear the roof back off and change something around before we're finally happy with it. Mostly it's been, since everything shut down and there aren't a lot of active train shows, really been focusing on the custom work. That has picked up a lot, I guess, because people are home now and they're getting, spending more time at their layouts and things. And we've been just really, really busy with the custom work, doing custom painting of locomotives and freight cars and a lot of kit building for people. Like I said, I just finished that roundhouse project. And next I've got to take that space and do another diorama of another South River Model Works kit for a regular client. And then I've got a stack of S-scale structures I'm building for one of my regular clients down in Florida.
Oh, whoops. Hold on, Mike. You just got muted. My fault.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I was trying to kill something that cropped up in the background, and of course the participants menu.
Of course.
Sorry about that.
The other big thing that's starting is we've been doing this, what we call the Rehoboth Beach project. And we have a client who actually lives in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And we have been recreating Rehoboth Avenue from the ocean all the way to the canal as it was in circa 1920. So far, we have done 3 tables for this, it starts in the ocean. We actually built a whole ocean scene with a boardwalk and a pier and waves. And today we got the go ahead to move into start table 4, which takes us a little closer to the east end of Rehoboth Beach to the canal. I think there's going to be 5 or 6 tables. Actually, I heard today there may be 6 tables because now he says he wants to cross the canal. So we've got to get that table built. And then once the table built and the track work is in, then we'll start building all the structures for that. It's been a very interesting project because the client's been doing all the research, making my job a lot easier, finding all the pictures and giving me rough dimensions and plot plans. And then I'm sitting down and doing a set of working drawings, sending them to him for approval. And then we're, building the structures, and it's all in N scale. But you can imagine a couple mile Rehoboth Avenue in N scale is still pretty big layout.
What size is one of the tables you're talking about?
Didn't bring that folder down here. They're like 36 by,
At least 4 or 5 foot.
yeah, they're like 36 by 48 is each table.
Oh, geez. For an instance, that's going to be huge once you get it finished.
Yeah, well, you got to think we're doing a 2-mile stretch of Rehoboth Avenue, and we've got some of the ocean out there too that we've done. I mean, one full table that I did over the summer, over the beginning of the summer, was pretty much the beach and the ocean and the boardwalk and the pier, and that took up one full table.
Is he a model railroader or what? Or
he got into the model railroading because he's not really a modeler. We met him at a show a few years ago when he was forming this project in his head. What it was Rehoboth Beach, when it was founded back in the late 1800s, was actually founded as a religious retreat, and there was no way to get there except by horse and buggy. And then at one point in the late 1800s, the railroad actually took the train, and it was the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad at the time. And they built a spur to take the train right down to Rehoboth Avenue, about a block from the beach. And there would be a train station there, and the train would stop. And I think what happens with my client, he retired, moved back to the Rehoboth area, which is where he grew up, and kind of made this as his hobby, doing the historical research, and wanted to recreate this
Right.
whole thing. So he's not really he's learning a lot about railroading now, because, you know, I had to talk to him about engines, and we had to repaint the passenger cars to have the proper railroad on them and things. But he's pretty much the brains of, you know, he knows what he wants, and he's doing all the research. I think his goal is he's going to have the whole layout, when it's done, set in the Rehoboth Beach Chamber of Commerce offices, so that people can come and see this and see what Rehoboth looked like 100 years ago. But it's been a fascinating project, and it's been going on. We're in 2.5 years of building stuff for this project for him.
I'll be darned. I'll be darned. Well, it sounds fascinating. I'd really like to talk to him about it. If you could put me in touch with him, I really would be interested in talking with him.
I will. I'll get you that information.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, don't let me hog the thing here. Anybody got some questions for Mike?
I got a question for Mike. He probably would know, because you said you spent some time in Savannah, right?
Yes.
What's the River Street Rambler?
Okay.
Assume I'm an idiot, which I am.
Okay. And I went past, because I'm used to these things. It's fine. There used to be, Savannah was known for the paper companies. There used to be a lot of paper mills. And that also gave Savannah a reputation of a town that smelled really bad, because when the pulp does stink. But River Street is, as you go towards the water in Savannah, you go down steps, and there's the one street that's on the river, and it's where hotels were, and ships would dock back in the 1700s and 1800s, and ships still go. But there were all these paper mills at the one end. So it was serviced by a railroad that went right down the middle of River Street. So all these different freight cars with raw material going in, or paper coming out of the plants, they needed to be taken by some kind of locomotive. Well, because it was a high tourist area, I believe it was the city of Savannah petitioned the then Southern Railway, and then later on Norfolk Southern, to do something to dress up the locomotive. Or maybe the railroads thought to do this on their own, because it was a tourist area and it would be good publicity. So originally it was an SW7, and then it was later as an SW1500 that they painted up in that multicolored paint scheme and called it the River Street Rambler, and it had the logo of the city of Savannah on the sides of the cab. And it was just a unique thing to that city. And it basically this train would go down the middle of this cobblestone street and pick up the cars from the paper plants, and then go back up out and then down to, I believe it was Dillard Yard, where they would switch them out with everything on the main line. So at the time, it was a pretty neat thing to see in Savannah, and it was kind of famous at the time. The tracks are actually gone now. They've ripped all that out, because that side of town is now hotels and restaurants and things. So some of the tracks are gone too. So it's change is kind of sad, but it was a unique thing. It was very colorful and neat to see.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of it. I'm like, I know you showed the picture of it, but like, where'd they come up with that? I mean,
somebody originally it was a Southern
I
Railway.
get the Southern Railway had a great publicity office, but for a one-off, that just seems kind of, I don't know, a historical oddity, for lack of a better way of me putting it.
Yeah, but I think at the era when it was done was originally in the 70s, when Savannah was being redone as this big tourist city. Because I know through the 50s and 60s and early 70s, Savannah kind of fallen on hard times. And when the Savannah College of Art and Design, the school I went to, opened up in 78, they really started the downtown revival of the town. So I think that was just all part of it, to turn into a really tourist spot instead of just a city in lower Georgia. That's just my belief, but it was just always there. So I guess got used to seeing it.
Mike, Greg here. I have a question about a lot of your detailed items. You have so many on your website that are unusual and that you don't find at other vendors. How do you come up with the ideas for them, and how do you know whether this is something I can laser cut out of wood, or it'll be better to be cast, and things like the pizza boxes and the ice machines. I'm sure you have to make all the graphics for those as well. How do you come up with?
Yeah, there's stories between all of them. Usually it's because there's something I need for a project, like the ice machines. I was detailing out gas stations, modern gas stations, and go by a gas station. It doesn't have an ice machine like that. They all do. Actually, it got to the point when we came out of that detail part. Every time we would drive by, the kids would point out ice machine every time we would see one. The pizza boxes was funny. There was a day we were driving to the grocery store. We were doing something stupid, and we're sitting at a light. And people love to litter, for some reason. And I'm sitting there at the light, and I'm looking at the street sign or the stop sign on the corner. I think it was a street sign. And there was just a pizza box that had blown up against it. And then the rain had kind of softened the cardboard. So it just kind of formed a little bit around there. And I just looked at it. I'm like, that would be a great detail. So I came home later that day, pulled the pizza box out of the trash the night before, measured the dimensions. And then like I said, I have a graphic design background. I just started looking up pizza logos and playing with it and having fun and scaled it all down. And I didn't even have a need for it. It was just a unique detail that I knew nobody had, and I thought people would like it. And then we did it so in our pizza boxes, there are little pizzas you can cut out and put in the pizza box too, or it can just be an extra.
Asked you,
a lot of times detail parts come out of just ideas.
Have any modelers asked you yet, when did pizza boxes first start coming out? Can I use it in my 50s layout? Can I use it in my 40s layout?
No, nobody's asked me that, but we do include with a lot of our kits a sheet of newspapers. We're actually got images of old newspapers and scaled them down. And it comes in a sheet on a very high acid, very lightweight paper. So we tell people to cut them out, and then you can ball them up and they look like newspapers. The other thing I tell people to do is take that sheet and soak it in an old cup of coffee, because it gives it that perfect yellowy stain. Well, one of my friends, I don't know if he was being funny or if he thought it was a good idea or if he was just trying to get my goat. He's like, it would be great if you did the newspapers for the different eras, 1940s newspapers, 1950s. I'm going, who can actually read that? No, we're not doing that. But yeah,
sounds like you ended up doing it.
No, we just did one standard sheet of newspapers because they're great little details. If you got a couple trash cans and you put a couple balled up yellow newspapers down there around them in the ground, it just looks a little more realistic. But yeah, every one of our detail parts, a lot of them are very unique because first of all, I don't want to do things other people are doing. A lot of them are just observational because of my wife's and I, our art school background. We're always observing and taking notes. We don't go anywhere without a sketchbook. And even before cell phones came out, I know my wife used to keep a camera in the car in case she saw something and just take off a couple quick pictures, because that's kind of the way in art school you're taught to always be observing things. And just always looking for new ideas and just stuff that's unique. Hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. I was always also happy to hear that you were involved with that Rehoboth Beach project, because I had watched, I think he has 4 videos on YouTube of the progress of it. And my wife and I spend a week every October in Rehoboth, except this year. And I had been marveling at the work he had been doing on that diorama. I did not know you were involved in it, and I can see why it looks so good now.
Yeah, he's not a modeler. He's, like I said, he's the brains and the planner and the researcher. But it's been a pleasure to work with him, because if I'm working with a guy that's researching and just giving me the materials to turn into a model, he's just been fantastic. He just gives me a packet for every building and we go on our way. Did you see the one of the waterfront scene with the waves and the bighorns? That was a lot of research to figure that out. That was a really fun structure to do. And that whole boardwalk and pier was all done board-on-board construction. That was not laser cut.
Right, and if I remember, it's 1910 or 1920, something like that.
Yeah, right around, probably, if you get right down to it, probably exactly 1918, because some of the structures that we've done were gone by 1920. Some didn't exist before 1910. So we're kind of in like a little 10-year pocket of time.
Does he have any plans on moving the diorama further north so you get some of Fort Miles or any of that area?
No, I think he's just pretty much focused on Rehoboth Avenue. 'Cause like I said, he wants to put it in the city chamber of commerce offices. Although he did say originally he was going to stop at the canal. Now he said he wants to go past the canal to where the Y used to be, because the train used to go down Rehoboth Avenue, but then there were down to the south side of Rehoboth, there were fish canneries along the canal. So it sounds like he wants to at least model that Y section. As we get more done, I think he's just seeing more and getting more and more ideas. So he's keeping me busy.
What's your website, Mike?
For the kits, it's nickandnoradesigns.com, all spelled out. For the custom work, it is tmbcustommodels.com.
Yeah, I put the one we have, which is the Nick and Nora Designs. I had it in the chat. What did you say was the other one?
The other one is tmbcustommodels.com. And then
Mike,
again,
I
there's
asked- Mike, I try to ask everybody this, so let me ask it to you. How do you know when a model is finished and it's time to put it aside and start a new project?
On personal stuff, that is hard. On client projects, it's pretty easy, because I work with clients to get their specifications and figure out just what they want. And they'll, like I said, a lot of times I don't do much of the research. My clients send me, tell me what they want, and they'll send me a picture. So I make it look like that. I just finished a bunch of Lehigh Valley models for one of my regular clients, and he's doing a lot of the research. And so I'm trying to make these look exactly like the photo, but we're not doing any weathering. So that's great. So I'm just doing crisp paint jobs, decal work, making sure we detail them out. One project I just finished, we just photographed it. I haven't even posted the pictures anywhere yet. Lehigh Valley had various hopper cars for different services. And we just did 2 Lehigh Valley cars that were covered hoppers used in salt service. So what I had to do is get 2 AccuRail 2-bay USRA hoppers. And then I got hopper roofs from Eastern Car Works, which are not around. So I had to find those on eBay. I had to shorten the roofs to fit these covered hoppers and then fill the ends, and then detail them out and then do custom decals. I found a Lehigh Valley set from Harold King that worked great. The only problem was in the middle of the cars in 3-inch letters, they said salt service, and those decals didn't exist. So I had to create those by using alphabet sets and going letter by letter, which is very time consuming because you only set 1 or 2 letters at a time. You got to hope they don't float away to keep them all aligned. So that was great, but we didn't have to weather them. So as long as I got as close to the prototype as we could, he's ecstatic. I did another one for him. He sent me one box car that had very, very special reporting marks. And I'm never going to forget this because it was routing marks. I had to do this letter by letter in 3-inch letters on both sides of the box car. When empty, return to Cayuga Salt Company, Ludlowville, New York. No decals existed. I had nothing I could even piece together. So I started with the center line because everything was left justified, but it all ended at the door. So I started with the middle line at the far right side and put 1 decal down. So put the C for the O for company down. When that dried, went back and did the C and went all the way out. And then I had my left justify so I could do the top and bottom lines. And it took a day to do each side because, of course, you got to let a decal dry and let the setting solution dry before you can do the next one. So I'd set a decal and then I'd jump on something else for a while, then come back and set a decal. It was done when the lettering was done on that project. It was kind of a simple one, but kind of not. But when I'm developing a kit or a new product, it's sometimes it's when I throw in the towel. George Lucas used to have a saying that I believe he heard of somebody else. He said, movies are never completed. They're just abandoned. You just kind of get to a point where like, that's it. That's all I'm going to do. But then of course, everybody knows he revisited Star Wars later and kind of went back and did the scenes. And I know a lot of us modelers do that too. We'll build something and a year from now, go back and do something else to it. Cause, I forgot this, or you find a new picture. And so I think that's the same for about everybody. But
Yeah.
with client projects, it's when I meet their specifications and get it to exactly the way that they want it. And that's when we photograph it, package it, and ship it out.
I'm friends with an author. She does science fiction,
Mhm.
and she talks about that with books, especially the revisiting. You make an error in a book that you don't catch till it's in print.
Yep.
You can't change it till the next edition, at which point all of the fans say, "What did you do?"
Oh, it's like that when you're doing kit design, you're doing instructions, and I write something and it gets missed in spell check, and then somebody comes up to me to show, you missed this on your instructions. Yeah, thanks, I saw. I fixed it. It won't happen again.
That's why I do digital instructions, because that way, if somebody says, "Hey, can you add this to the instructions?" I can just
Right.
update the file on my website.
Right.
It makes it so much easier. And if somebody needs if somebody needs a printed copy, I can make it for them. Not a
Right.
big deal. And I've said that to people, like, "Hey, if you can't print it off, I will happily print it for you and mail it with the kit. Just let me know, just so I know."
What do you do when the customer says that English is their third language and you have to translate the instructions?
Well, that happened the other day. We had a client reading the instructions who English was not his first language. And the way I had phrased something made him think that there was something different in the kit than what he had. So I had to keep stopping him because he would start talking again and going past it. And I'd have to keep slowing him down and going back to, no, this point, maybe I should have written it this way, or maybe I should have done it that way. But in our kits, one things that I do a lot, so everybody grew up here doing plastic models at some point. You know how they have the exploded isometrics where how parts fit together. I try to do that a lot with our kits just to make it easier for people. Because people get information different ways. Some people like to read it and understand it. Some people can look at just a picture of a finished model and know what they're doing. Some people need the exploded views. We try to do things like labeling and numbering of our parts and then calling them out in the instructions, so it's kind of easier to follow. Plus, I like to draw, so that's kind of fun.
I lived in Taiwan when I was younger. And one thing I noticed about languages, because of course, being Jewish, I do Hebrew. You can say something, makes perfect sense in English, very exact, on the money. You try to say that in a different culture, especially if the person doesn't speak English. And the language he does speak uses a totally different word order. And it's like the guy you were talking to, he could not, the customer is at that point stumped, confused, and yeah.
Oh, and it even gets worse in the technical world because there are ways that you write something technically that you wouldn't use in regular conversation, because there's just different ways of approaching things. So that's why we do the drawings. And when I'm writing instructions, I'm not an author. It's not my strong suit. I find I use pretty much the same intros to every paragraph. Now that you've assembled this, glue this to this. And it's like, I hate my writing style, but I'm trying to just keep it super simple for people. But I see pictures of stuff that we've done, our kits that people have built. So they're figuring it out some way. So hopefully it's clear enough for people, but I'm sure there's always room for improvement.
I know my biggest problem, like when I've done instructions, is like I've taken a bit of a different philosophy. Yeah, you could do an exploded view or a drawing that shows where the big stuff goes. But then when you've got the little trim piece or the little square bracket and you don't see it on the plans and it's so tiny you can't figure out where it goes in the drawing, you can't help but sit there and go, what? I can't, perfect example. When I was looking at stuff the other day for another crazy project I'm working on, because, I'm into ON30, I do crazy shit. As I'm looking at the drawings of the locomotive that Bachman put out, because I'm pilfering parts from it, I'm like, where are the truck clips? Like, where do these clips go? And you're looking at them and they have them, this tiny little thing that looks, I just couldn't figure out for the life of me what they even were. And I'm like, they have to mount the same way the ON31 does because it's just the scale. They just scaled up the mechanism. They had to have done the same thing. I mean, the trucks are
Yeah,
just half the size, but it's like,
right.
that's why I like with mine, I've gone and done on the complex kits anyway. Like the Steam dummy I just put out, that one's pretty self-explanatory as the way I see it, because
Mhm.
it's literally the stuff is peel and stick into the insert. You just match the shapes and you're good. But you know, the more complex kits I've done basically photographed it step by step because I'm like, it's the only way I can think of doing it. You know, at least the picture before and after, at least you know, oh,
Well,
this part must go here.
yeah, you're doing your instructions digitally online, you know, or as electronic version. One of the problems with photography, and like I said, I have a graphic design background, so I try really hard not to let this happen. But I know it's happened on early resin freight car kits. Guys will take pictures, but they didn't have the advantage of Photoshop, or they didn't even realize. And by the time you put a photograph into print, if you don't go back and clean it up and touch it up, it's just mud and you can't even see what's going on in the picture. I've gotten several kits from people over the years to build where there have been photos to illustrate what's going on, and you can't make anything out because it's just, I'm sure the picture in color when they took it was beautiful, but when they photocopied it or when they scanned it into their document or whatever, it was unlegible.
Yeah, you know, you think back to the photocopied printouts they give you in school, or you
Right,
know,
right.
my era.
So,
You know, for me in high school, that's what they would have done, and that's what a lot of the teachers did.
maybe
And some of the stuff you just couldn't even read it, and you're just guessing. You know, as the
that's old
teacher's
folks. Yeah.
reading, you know, as the teacher or even the professors that I had in college were just reading it off, and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, it probably says that. Yeah, sure, okay, that looks like
Mike,
an amorphous blob, but yeah.
Mike, do you enjoy writing instructions, or is that an onerous task?
That is the worst part of the kit development. I love doing the drawings. I love doing the technical drawings to lead up to it. I love doing the illustrations for the instructions. I've disciplined myself to when I'm building it to take very, very good notes. I've always got a big yellow pad in every job folder where I write down things as I'm doing them, or I'll do little sketches as I'm building the prototype. But writing the instructions is the least fun part of the whole thing. Like I already built the model. I just want to package it up and move on, but I'm not done the work yet. And like I said, I'm not comfortable with my own writing style. I never have been because I'm not a writer. So I know I overthink it a lot. I have a friend that's an author and I kind of bounce things off of her and she laughs at me because she writes romance novels and she's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but it is the real work that goes into the kit development more so than the design.
Well, I've done graphic arts. That's what I got trained in school. And you're right about photographs. When we first started doing digital, they were still teaching us how to do things with tape and a knife and film.
Yep.
Because you couldn't get a good photograph. I mean, that's only in the last 10 years, maybe.
It's been probably closer to 15, but yeah, I mean, when I was a little kid, the one part I left out of my background story, when I was about 4 years old, my parents decided to open up a printing business.
Okay,
Well,
so you know what I'm talking about.
oh yeah. So let me tell you, a little kid with an inside of a giant building with just reams and reams of paper and X-Acto knives and markers and press type, and oh my goodness, what a playground that was. So yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that part because I would help my dad. He taught me when I was really little how to shoot things down and scale things down and how to do paste ups and all the
Yeah,
fun
I mean,
stuff.
I remember when I first started working with the negatives, we had the reduction camera, which of course you could invert and
Yep.
enlarge things.
Yep.
But it was all cameras and X-Acto knives and red colored tape and
Ruby Lith. Oh yeah.
oh yeah,
I think I still got a roll of Ruby Lith laying around here somewhere.
you have a bottle of the liquid stuff left?
No, I'm sure that was gone years ago.
Yeah, it dried up on me, but it's just, technical writing is so much different than
So
writing
Mike,
a novel or a letter. And
Mike,
Yes.
Like when you're working up a model, well, what something I started doing was when I'm down to, I take notes and all, but when I'm down to writing the instructions step by step, I'll be building step by step with every paragraph, every step of the way, and double checking like that. And, you know, working your way up to the model itself to where you think you got where I think I have the finished version. I've probably built, you know, 6 or 8 of them there.
Greetings.
So if you don't,
I'm connect on this Zoom meeting. I'm letting
Sorry about that. He kept popping around in there.
so yeah, so if you don't really pay attention, you know, you've built it 6 or 8 or 10 times, and it's so easy to just let something float by that you know it's in your head, but it's not on the paper yet.
Yeah, that's why I take really good notes, because sometimes I change what my original plan was. I change in the middle of it, so I've got to go back and redo the computer drawing thing. So I've gotten really good at taking diligent notes when I'm doing it, and then when I'm writing the instructions, I have either the model sitting there on the desk with me. When I did the coal mine, we actually were going away on vacation, so we took tons and tons of pictures and actually had them printed out, so I could spread all the pictures out on the dining room table at the beach house we were staying at. So it would rain, so we couldn't be on the beach. Everybody would go do something else, and I would sit in the house on the dining room table with all these pictures and write the instructions for the coal mine kit.
Yeah, doing it as you're doing it, because you can easily get so familiar with something that you forget to add the most important little detail.
Yeah, the other thing I do when I'm doing it and I'm writing my notes, I've got my drawings for all of my cut files spread out too. So I'm marking those up with a red pen everywhere, so I don't forget any of that stuff. So it's, and then then I have my wife read them, and she'll say this sentence doesn't make sense. So
Yeah, having somebody else go over it again.
Yep.
Mike, you have an art background, and
Yes.
Hearing you talk, that's really played a major part of your creativity and what you bring to the hobby.
Oh, it's definitely part of it. It's kind of odd. My goal when I was a little kid was I wanted to be a professional artist working in my own studio. I just didn't think it would be modeling studio. I thought it would be, you know, big canvases and illustration board. But it does kind of give me a different perspective, just because of not just my college training. My high school art teacher and my high school drafting teacher were also really, really huge influences on me. And then, like I said, my parents owned a print shop when I was a little kid. So it's just, I've always been exposed to that constantly my whole life.
So I've never been exposed to any of it. And a lot of modelers have never been exposed to any of it. But I'm convinced that art is a major part of modeling and a major part of model building. So for us non-artists and non-creative people, do you have any tips or advice on how we should think about our modeling building, and how we should maybe try to get more of an art flavor into our modeling? If that's a good terminology.
Yeah, a lot of it is what a lot of model railroaders do already, and also military modelers and things. You're trying to recreate something or do a version of something that was in the real world. And I know tons and tons of modelers that are also big train watchers. So they'll go around and photograph things and see things. It's a lot of research and observation. Lot of photographs if you're not very good at drawing, keeping a sketchbook at hand for when you get ideas, even if your sketchbook is a square with a railroad name on it and you got a whole bunch of notes underneath because you don't draw very well. And then sometimes it's a lot of trial and error with different things. Another thing is, don't be afraid to use new techniques or new paints or new glues you haven't worked with before. One of the things that I'm kind of known for at some of the various train shows, when they're doing clinics, I do a clinic about paints and glues, where I pretty much cover every type of glue ever made and every type of paint that exists, and explain how they're used, what their best uses are for, why they work on some things and don't work on others, and how you can paint acrylic paints over enamel paints, how you can, mix paint. Because I found, and some of this is from my hobby store time, because I spent a lot of my life working in hobby stores, and a lot of it talking to other modelers that are not having success. So I wrote this whole clinic because one thing that surprised me is how many people that are building models but really didn't know what the best glue to use for each application was. CA is a great glue. CA will bond metal to plastic, but if you have ever put a etched metal roof walk on a plastic boxcar and taken it out of your house in winter to your friend's house, the roof walk has popped up. And most people don't know why that happens, because CA is not a great glue for that application. It has to do with expansion and contraction and temperature changes. So that's an example where you would use canopy glue, and that's one of the things I discuss when I'm doing that clinic. But I realized that a lot of modelers didn't have that kind of information either. They just used whatever their friends said or whatever they found at the hobby store. And I have pretty much a different glue for every little application you could use. It got to the point where my kids would not ask me for glue. They would tell me what they needed to fix, so I would give them the right thing, because then they would get a lecture and a whole talk about, well, you can't use Elmer's glue to put the windshield back in a car. No, he doesn't know. So, but anyhow, but with getting back to the art side, it's just a lot of observation, and don't be afraid to try things. I tell people a lot of times, if you're working with a new paint that you haven't used before, or if you want to get into airbrushing finally, you've never airbrushed before, I kind of teach people some of the things that I learned when I first started doing airbrushing, even before I was custom painting models, when I was doing airbrush illustration things when I was like 13 and 14. Tell people basic techniques and what paints to use that aren't expensive, instead of getting a nice expensive airbrush, trying to run some scale coat through it on your $300 brass locomotive and screwing up. Not the best way to start airbrushing. Easier to get some poster board and some watercolor paint that's designed for the airbrush and play with it and get the feel of it and learn the technique. And then when you want to get scale coat, get some scrap plastic or go pick an old model up for $2 at a swap meet. Start painting on that before you go to your finished project. There's learning curves with everything. But it's really for the modelers that don't think they're artists. You're trying to create something, whether it's something that existed in the past or something out of your mind. You are creating, and that's what art is. And most modelers have observed. You've got the idea from somewhere. So find more resources and references for it, and really just get your hands into it and have fun with it.
The other thing that I'm convinced of is that I think a modeler who has confidence in his ability, he can pretty well build anything he wants to build. If he sees a picture of it, he knows on the front end that he can build it, no questions asked. It's just how he's going to do it and how long it's going to take him. Gaining that confidence is something that I think a lot of modelers don't have. Do you have any suggestions on gaining that level of confidence in your modeling?
Yeah, practice, of course, like with anything else, whether it's modeling or playing the guitar or trying to learn how to ice skate, practice. If you go to hobby stores, talk to the people at the hobby stores. What do they recommend? Forums like this are great for it, because you've got all these other modelers that have experience with different things. When we do shows, we have a lot of people that come up and say, well, I've never built a wood craftsman kit. How difficult is it? Some kits we designed that are kind of entry level to get people warmed up and have very basic techniques. Or you could take those basic kits and expand on them and push your limits. But really, there's nothing in the hobby that's out of range for most people if you've got a little bit of patience and some dexterity, manual dexterity, and good eyeglasses or magnifiers, whatever you need to see things better. Just little patience, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you buy one of our kits and you are cutting and you decide to try to modify it and you mess up a wall, call me. I'll send you a replacement wall. It's not a big deal. It's more important to have fun. I think it's my perception's so different because I spent all this time working in hobby stores and then making it my career and the kit line. I want it to be fun for everybody. I want people getting in there, picking up a model and having a good time and having a good experience with it. And really, when you think about it, modeling gives you the best bang for the buck of entertainment you could possibly have. You spend $50 on a kit and you spend 20 hours turning it into this beautiful piece of art. That's what an investment. What a great way to spend your time and get a return.
Sounds good to me.
Well, go ahead. Anyway, this is Jim Murphy. I was going to offer a suggestion that you touched on, Mike, that no matter where you are, if you see a modeling image, and that's whether you're walking down a street or you're in a different situation. Thank goodness for cell phones with cameras on them. Snap a picture. I did that when I was working, and I have photos of railroad topics and photos of other shot. I used to work a lot in the paper industry, and I have some photos of, yes, Union Camp, and thank God that cameras do not capture smell. I spent way too many days and nights at that mill and rebuilding number 6 paper machine, and it was a challenge. The only redeeming social merit was to go down on the riverfront and get the smell out of my nose with some other liquids. But by carrying that camera, even around the yard back there, I captured some photos, and this is 30 years ago, of railway equipment that has long since disappeared, along with paper mill equipment that's long since disappeared. And I have used some of those as recently as 6 months ago and some of the modeling. So observe, but snap a picture. It's amazing how grateful you'll be to yourself years later. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. That's one thing. You guys can't see it, but because it's in front of me, the laptop's saying, but it's my reference library of all my books I've bought over the years. But underneath one of these cabinets here are all of the old style archival photo boxes that are just full of pictures. When we bought our first house, it was in Bear, Delaware, and there was we had our backyard, then there was a line of trees and a field, and another line of trees. On the other side of the trees was part of the Conrail line. It also had some of their holding yards. On the other side of the holding yards was the Amtrak repair facility for the passenger cars, not locomotives, but the passenger cars. So I would go out after work a lot of times, and I would go through the little hole in the fence that I didn't put it there. It was there, but I would go through with a camera, and this was before digital days. And I would just walk up and down the holding yards and take pictures of all this equipment. And sometimes it would be maintenance of way stuff. Sometimes there'd be things I had never seen before. And I'd just shoot off a whole bunch of pictures, and then we print them out, and I'd put them in the archival boxes just for future reference material. Again, that's kind of the art school training, is we would always take your sketchbook with you. If we ever got caught out by one of our professors without a sketchbook, you'd listen to it the next day. One of the things they encourage us to do was go to the mall and just sketch people, sketch this. Savannah's got a lot of great parks and things in it. You got a day off, go sketch the Savannah Fountain, sit out there, go down to River Street, go out to Fort Pulaski. Building a, I call it a reference library of sketches and photographs and observations is only going to help your modeling in the future. And it's a great resource for ideas for projects. Sometimes a project comes up to somebody like, when I was so-and-so, I saw this freight car next to a building that kind of was really weathered and had a weird, post here. And if you had a picture of it, then there's the beginning of a modeling scene.
Well, I'm typing something up here, but don't be afraid to use a method or a idea that isn't model trains.
Oh, yeah.
Don't be afraid to get out I got a book out here either 101 or 1001 model railroad tricks and stuff.
Hmm.
There's stuff in there that I definitely use. And one of my places to go, if I, oh man, how do they do that? And I go in, oh, they used to do it this way. It may not be what all the nice new fancy stuff is, but if it works.
Well, that's one of the things that's kind of come on. The military modelers have been using several products for years, like the AK weathering powders and weathering washes and things that the tank guys use. And some of the model railroaders have been following those and pulling those products into the model railroad world. Why won't, if they work on a 1/35th scale tank, they'll definitely work on an HO locomotive. There's a lot of products out there, and some people think that it's, oh, this is only for the military modelers, or it's only for this. Whereas I use everything when I'm creating something. I use, regular oil paints that you use on canvas for some applications. I've been known to use palette watercolors to try to pull some things off. I don't really care what the material is. I'm more concerned about what the end result is. Some of our kits have incorporated some interesting things that I've just had around. I had these really thin copper sheets somebody gave me years and years ago. I had no idea what to do with. We were developing the coal mine. It had these chutes that had covers on them. And I thought that it'd be really neat just for a change of material. If I use this really thin copper sheet, we cut into strips and you cut into small pieces and bend it for the covers of these coal chutes. And it's a different color. It's a different material. It patinas differently. And it just kind of gave a real interesting accent that wasn't really intended. That was not what its original purpose was for.
Yeah, you could also cut up that copper for metal roof.
Yeah.
A lot of copper roof around.
Yeah, there's all kinds of materials that you can do fun things with. It's trial and error and looking around and playing. It's just kind of playing, just trying out a new technique. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I was working on the prototype for what's going to be one of our new kits. And I was doing a whole different technique using black construction paper, which we use quite often in kits, but I was doing a whole different painting technique on it. And unfortunately, I did it after I applied the paper to the subroof instead of doing it on its own and checking it out. And I went back the next day and didn't like it and tried to touch it up. I ended up ripping off the whole roof and starting over. Mistakes happen. All ideas don't work out great, but who's different?
Yeah, but like this link has magazines from the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays you buy a product from like you or somebody else, or they've got methods of doing the same thing out of a piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, it's because over time somebody's realized that, oh, somebody will buy this if we package it this way. It's like the weathering chalks that have come out over the years, and the pan pastels. Those are things that have been out in the art world forever, and modelers are just starting to get interested in it and starting to play with it on for weathering techniques. Where I was using that stuff to do landscapes in college. So,
oh yeah,
just because
and the old ones, cutting up a cereal box may take longer. Buying the kit may cost more, but use what works.
That's what creating is all about. I mean, the nice part about kits is usually the materials are better. Instead of trying to make a piece of cardboard look like clapboard siding, you get actually wood clapboard siding. So it's an upgrade, but as long as you're creating, when we're doing our mock-ups for kits, I am still doing them just out of chipboard, just regular cheap old chipboard, like comes in your picture frames or is on the back of every notepad you have, because it's a cheap and expensive material. And if I make a mistake on the mock-up, I'm not out any money. Maybe 3 cents worth of chipboard gets used. But then again, the chipboard we also use as the subroof material for all of our kits, because it's cardboard, it's inexpensive, you can paint it, you can stain it, you can glue things to it. It's pretty stable. It's a great inexpensive product. You can do has a lot of modeling options.
It doesn't soak up glue like cheaper stuff.
No, it's the when you get a picture frame, it's got that cardboard pad in it. That's chipboard.
Yeah.
So it glues. You can use wood glue or white glue on it. You don't need a lot of glue. Some people will really load the glue on things, and that's when you get warpage because you're putting so much moisture. But it glues together great. Glues great to wood or to itself. Again, and you can paint it or you can cover it with something. So it's a good inexpensive material to keep around.
You can get it just by itself.
Yes, we actually sell it in 5-sheet packs for $3.50, 8.5 by 11 sheets of chipboard. We get it by the case because we use it. Like I said, we use it as a subroof in all of our kits and as the backer board in our billboard kits. In college, we used to save the back of every notepad and you sell it to the architecture students for a bundle.
Yeah, because I've been to, I've been to press school. I've been to not art school, but graphic design and all these. I never knew you could buy chipboard just as plain chipboard.
Well, it's not common to find. Like we find it because we get it from one of the companies we deal with for packaging supplies and things. So it's common in that industry. Like if you think about it, every picture frame you've ever gotten has had that piece of chipboard in it. So it's
Somebody
out there.
makes it.
Yeah. And like I said, we buy it by the case. We just got into cases of it a couple weeks ago. That'll be gone fast. We go through a lot of it. Yeah, it used to be the blueprint prices you could get it from, but they're pretty much gone now too. Like I said, it's something. So if you ever need chipboard, we got it. We sell it in 5-sheet. We sell a lot of it.
Can you even still get blueprints?
REI. We still have some here.
There is one place in Delaware that my wife uses. She's an interior designer, so she's got need for that. She's got one source in town left.
It's like hobby shops used to be all over the place.
Right, exactly.
Mike, I couldn't let you get out of here if I didn't ask you about another one of your past interests. It is Noirvember, and
Oh, I'm jonesing so bad. I can only watch so many reruns of past Stanley Cup championships.
well, I remember having long discussions about film noir with you at Timonium.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there's some kind of interest in people who are into art or graphic arts or something where the unusual filming that they use, the high contrast, low key light that film noir used, piques our interest in visual arts.
Oh, definitely. I've got so many ideas from different film noirs. In fact, we named, our company name comes from the original Thin Man movies, those are kind of dark comedies. But we've got one of our kits is named after a character from The Big Sleep with Humphrey Bogart, our Art Huck's Garage, just because that whole scene when Humphrey Bogart goes out to that barn that's turned into a garage with the farmhouse. It's so interesting. I've actually got a sketchbook on my desk with 3 pages of sketches from the lunch counter from The Postman Only Will Ring Twice, because it's just such an interesting lunch counter. And I was watching the movie one night and I was sketching and I'm like, I could turn that into a model. I know somewhere in this room there is a sketch I did of Humphrey Bogart's office from the Maltese Falcon, because I wanted to do an interior diorama scene at one point. And I've also got pages and pages of sketches and planning to do a vignette of Rear Window, looking out Jimmy Stewart's thing. Because it's just, and that's one thing I had thought about getting into, was going to Hollywood and getting into the movies. I wanted to do special effects work, but also set design work and things was fun. So that definitely has a big influence on me. And part of when I'm watching a movie, I'll see something in a scene and be like, that's, make a note of it.
If you ever come out with a model of Angel Flight, I would buy it, even though there's absolutely no place you could put it on a layout.
Well, another one I was watching a couple weeks ago was Moontide with I think that's Ida Lupino was in it, and it's this little barge pier off of a long pier thing. I'm like, that would look big. It's such an interesting model. And I was watching another one with John Garfield called Out of the Fog, where he plays a guy that tries to he's a racketeer, and he's
Yep.
trying to get people to pay him protection money so he doesn't burn their boats down. And there's just this little restaurant and a tailor shop right on the edge of this pier, and the way that they've got it lit, it's such a unique scene. I'm like, that would be a great model too. But I don't have those. Sound more like personal vanity models and stuff I'd actually turn into kits.
Well, but I think you're right in that the way they would light those and make the shadows and everything, I think that's some of what we like in creating in our models is the shadow lines, the perspectives and stuff. You know, we're probably all a little bit art director inside us when we're building our models.
Well, yeah, it's because when they're doing that, they're trying to make that scene engage you and draw you in, which is pretty much the exact thing that we're doing when working on a layout or working on a small diorama. We're trying to design something that's going to just suck people's attention right into what we're doing.
All of us have had a model that it's like, okay, I'm done, but I don't like this. And you get it in the right light, and it just comes to life. It's totally different visual impact. Because like you say, the shadows and it just makes a difference. Because my workbench has like 4 lamps around it so I can see better.
Right.
But that's not the way you're going to see it when it's finished and part of a diorama or something.
I have the advantage of my studio is very well lit. It's brighter in here most days than it is outside, especially today. It was gray and rainy. And there's no, I don't have any windows in here either. So I don't know what's going on outside. So I can just focus on work. So down here, it's really, really bright. And I've got a combination of cool lights and warm lights. So it kind of overall gives a natural feel when I'm at the workbench. But I do find it interesting when we do big dioramas and the weather's nice and we take them outside to photograph, they do really come to life that way, even more so than all the time I've put in them here in the way I get to view them.
Yeah, one of the guys on MRH, I can't think of his name or the name of his channel, but he does all of his advertising photographing outside.
Yeah, I prefer to do all of our photographs that we use for the kits, for the instructions, and everything. I much prefer to have it outside. It's on a nice, little bit cloudy day. You get the best lighting at certain times of day. You get the better shadows than you can recreate inside, unless you've got a huge sound stage, which we don't. We've got photo lights and in well lit areas and good photography lights, but nothing beats good natural lighting. Taking a diorama out to the middle of the yard at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it looks wonderful. You can get natural shadows. You turn the thing, and we did that with our I think it was our Sea View kit. We took it outside, and my wife's the photographer, and she was spinning it around, and I designed the kit, so I designed all the jig jogs in it, and I knew what I was planning. But as she's photographing it and turning around, all these natural shadow lines are coming. It just became so much more interesting.
Natural sunlight will come in your window and go to every corner of your house. And after the sun goes down, you turn on the light, you can't see a thing.
Right.
It's this point source. There's something about natural light that just does things that I don't care how good your lights are, you can't duplicate. I guess
What's the earliest kit that you have?
That we manufacture?
Yes.
Our first kit was the Crab Shack. That's ST002 on our inventory. Actually, ST001 is still on the workbench because I couldn't figure out how to create something that I wanted to add to it. But our first kit was the Crab Shack, and it's still available. None of our kits to this point have been limited edition, so we do keep them on hand.
Well, what I meant was, what's the earliest era that you do?
Oh, a lot of our kits could be used from the late 1800s up until almost present day. Our haunted house was based on an actual structure in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and it was called the Honeymoon House, and it actually was built in the mid to late 1800s and existed through the 1950s. I know our Annie's lunch counter and our Carbone's garage, the pictures that I saw were both from the 1920s or 30s eras, and I'm pretty sure that those buildings were put before then. So I've tried to focus so that stuff would be pretty much from just before the turn of the century, all the way up through the 1980s for a lot of them. Some you could still see today. One of ours is based on a sub shop that existed, and actually probably still would exist over on Route 40 if they hadn't built a Lowe's about 30 years ago that they since moved into an even bigger Lowe's. It probably would still be there.
Yeah, I'm for myself. I'm always I'm trying to build a small little layout that's sort of like 1875-ish, and it's it's a little on the hard side trying to find not only railroad models that are not the very well known Mantua General. It seems that I keep on forgetting the camera's here. But I mean, it's like there's a lot of times that there seems to be not much from what I've seen of anything that's from the 18th century and all that.
Stuff is hard to find. Do you have any models that are really that? I mean, like your gas station has older pumps, but how backdatable is it just by getting rid of the quote modern stuff, and do the gravity pumps and things like that? Is the building still good if the details change?
I know that our gas station's based on a real one, and I know it still exists in one form or another. I don't know how long it was there in that point. I really didn't do a lot of research on the building. I just, like I said, with that one, I saw a picture and was just enthralled and just wanted to recreate that scene. But I'm sure, like I said, I think it's 1930s or 40s era. I saw the picture. It probably was put up in the mid 1910 era. Just from when automobiles were started to come into common use. I'm pretty sure that our Sycamore Springs Hotel backdrop kit would be backdatable for that era because we did it kind of as a classical design. And I know the haunted house could go back that far because I know the prototype was built in the mid to late 1800s. I haven't really focused on era as much as I've tried to focus a little more on region. As with some manufacturers, stuff is either very, very Midwest or very, very Northeastern. And I've tried to do more, because I'm in Delaware, I've tried to give things much more of a Mid-Atlantic kind of feel and base things. That's why our first kit was the Crab Shack, because we're right next to the Chesapeake Bay, where I spent a lot of time as a kid growing up. So we had to have a Crab Shack be our first one, and that's actually based on two different structures in the area. Some of our other houses are actually based on real houses in Newcastle and in Newark. So I haven't focused so much on era. I've tried to do stuff that could be used for a lot of eras, but I've really focused a little more on region. I've branched out a bit with some of my other ideas and kind of gotten away from things, but originally the focus was to kind of do stuff that was more representative of the Mid-Atlantic region.
Mike, are all of your kits, are they prototypical? I mean, are they real structures, or do you design them freelance, or what?
Some of them are based on real things. We have 2 stations that are based on actual Southern Railway stations done from actual Southern Railway drawings. Because the Southern guys were saying nobody does kits for them, and somebody gave me a whole stack of drawings, so I didn't have an excuse. I couldn't do it. I said our gas station and our Annie's lunch counter were from photos of actual structures that I had seen. The Crab Shack was designed from a couple different things. Some of our kits are just completely out of my head. Our Baker's Row was just a sketch I did one day. The Sycamore Springs Hotel was a sketch I did at a train show at a RPM meet in Chicago, and everybody was in the clinic rooms and the room was quiet. I was sitting there with the sketchbook and I just sketched that building, and I really liked it. And I came back from the show and I walked into the studio, just pulled out some basswood and found some windows I had laying around and just fabricated the model without even drawing it. And it turned out like I wanted. So then I had to go back and create the drawings. So that one's clearly out of my head. Our Winans manufacturing, same thing with our 2 waterfront kits, Henlope and Landing and Seaview. They were just hodgepodges of different things I had seen that I wanted to represent in kits, just a whole bunch of ideas this is why I'm always playing in the sketchbooks, and you know, there were different versions of them as I sketched and fleshed them out. So I would say it's 60-40. 40% are probably based on actual real world structures, and 60 are just straight out of my head. Now, the ones out of my head might have real world elements from things I've seen on different structures. I decided to all kind of cobble together, which is what happened in the case of the Seaview. Oh, I saw one little shack did this. I saw these pilings did this. Oh, I saw a jig jog in a weird corner on a building. Let's add that. So yeah, I would say it's probably 60-40, 60 just out of my head.
Very good. Anybody have any more questions for Mike?
Well, I could ask my ambiguous, when are you going to do S scale, but you sound like you're too busy.
I haven't broached an S scale yet. I did have somebody tell me that if we decide to go into S scale, he will pretty much market it for us. I haven't explored it. Like I said, since the shows stopped back in February, we were actually getting ready to do the Valley Forge RPM when the whole world came to a screeching halt. And I haven't really been, I've been focusing on developing some new HO stuff, but I've been so busy with the custom work the past several months. Haven't branched out into S scale at this point. I'm still in a little bit of trouble for breaking into O scale and N scale the way I did. When we broached into N scale at first, I did 2 kits, and then I did another kit, and then I brought it up to a grand total of 5, and I kept it that way for a couple years. And 2 years ago, I got the great idea, or a year and a half ago, I got the great idea of let's expand our N scale line and let's jump into O scale kits too. And I made this decision on New Year's Eve and had everything ready and packaged for the Springfield show the end of January. And I'm still in a little bit of trouble about that. So, because they turned upside down for a long time.
You could get in trouble doing that one.
Yeah, I did. Didn't help that the mother-in-law and my sister-in-law and her kids were staying with it at the time as I'm cutting all these new kits and packaging stuff. So I had material coming in every day. We were still trying to get custom work done, and every evening was spent in the kitchen packaging up kits, and it was quite a production.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I really do appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. I've learned a lot, and I really enjoyed what you're talking about in your kits. I think it's fantastic. Your art background obviously has been a major source of your creativity, and I really do appreciate you sharing with us tonight.
Thanks for having me on to talk to everybody. It's been fun.
Great. Next time, this coming Saturday, Howard Zane is going to join us. So I think you'll enjoy meeting him and hearing what he has to say. So I hope you'll come back Saturday and join our happy little family. And until then, thanks so much for coming this evening. And unless anybody has anything more, that'll do it for